The wind moved like breath through the bones of a dead city. Ash and dust coiled through shattered archways, weaving around monoliths that once pierced the sky, but now leaned like old warriors, fractured, forgotten, and half-buried in silence. The ruins stretched beneath a sky of fractured light, clouds veined with electric gold, like some ancient god had cracked the atmosphere open and let the planet bleed sunlight. Caleb stood at the edge of the collapse, staring into the emptiness. The place reeked of abandonment, not just the physical kind, but the emotional silence that clung to places after something terrible happened. He took a slow breath and stepped forward, boots crunching over broken tiles and blackened glass. His helmet readouts flickered. Atmospheric levels, stable. Radiation, mild. Life signs, faint but present. That made no sense. The Varani homeworld had been evacuated decades ago. What little was known about them came from fragments, shattered records, cautionary tales, diplomatic ghost stories. Once a luminous, isolationist race, they'd vanished almost overnight, pulling their science, their language, and their cities with them. Some said it was disease, others, internal war. But the truth? The truth was buried beneath dust and time. Caleb wasn't here to find the truth, not officially. The mission brief had called it a low-risk recon sweep, solo deployment, 2-week scan and extract, but he knew better. The brass didn't send someone like him out here unless they wanted him gone, not jailed, not dead, just removed. Too many questions, too much heart. He didn't handle loss the way soldiers were supposed to. He remembered faces. Still saw the little boy with the soft lungs and bright eyes he couldn't save. Still heard the screams from Durelian when the medships didn't come. There was a time when he believed in the system. Now he believed in gravity and how hard it hit when you fell. His scanner beeped again. Faint, unstable life signs about 20 meters deeper into the ruins. He followed the signal through a narrow arch, where the wind died completely. The air thickened. Something about this place wasn't just old. It was watching. He stepped through a half-collapsed corridor and saw her, slumped against the wall. Tangled in strands of scorched cloth and ash-laced debris was a woman, Varani. Her skin was smooth and pale blue, veins beneath glowing faintly like rivers of dim starlight. Her silver-white hair was matted with dust, her arms wrapped loosely around something in her lap. Then he heard it. A sound so soft it barely registered, a broken breath, a whimper. Caleb's heart seized. He crossed the space in seconds, dropping to his knees. The bundle in the woman's arms shifted slightly. A child, small, blue-skinned, a Varani infant. Her limbs were stiff, her tiny chest fluttering with weak, irregular gasps, eyes closed, barely conscious. Caleb fumbled with his pack, instinct overriding protocol. No pediatric gear, no oxygen tank calibrated for non-human biology. He yanked off his gloves, activating his suit's internal heating layers, and pressed the child gently against his chest. "Come on," he whispered. "Stay with me." He began compressions, delicate, careful improvising off human CPR. Her body felt too light, too fragile. He adjusted the rhythm, listening for any sign of response. He pushed warmth through his suit and into her cold skin. No reaction. His hands moved faster, breath harder. "Come on, little star. Don't give up on me." Then, a gasp, weak, staggered. The child's chest lifted once, then again. He exhaled, knees shaking, heart hammering in his ribs. "She's breathing," he said, voice almost breaking. That's when the woman stirred. Her body jerked upright, eyes snapping open, brilliant violet, sharp as blades. In a blink, her wrist twisted and a blade hissed out from beneath her sleeve. She lunged at him with a cry so raw it froze him mid-breath. "You..." He raised his hands. "Wait." She didn't. The blade stopped inches from his neck. "My baby won't wake up. Please help her, human." Her voice cracked at the edges, fury laced with fear. Her hand trembled. "I did," Caleb said calmly, heart racing. "She's breathing now. Look." The child stirred against him, letting out a faint, gurgling sound. The Varani woman froze, her weapon still raised. Then her eyes dropped. She saw the motion, the life. Her knees gave out. She collapsed to the floor, arms reaching forward. He hesitated, then gently placed the baby into her arms. Their hands brushed for the briefest moment, warm skin against cold fingers. And he felt it. A jolt, not just of touch, but of meaning. Like something ancient had just shifted between them. The woman clutched the child to her chest, shaking, whispering something in her own language. Her eyes never left Caleb's. "You saved her," she said. The words weren't gratitude. They were confusion, suspicion. I tried, he said. She did most of the work. You're human, she said slowly, as if that explained everything that shouldn't be possible. I've been called worse. She didn't laugh, but her shoulders lowered a fraction. Caleb studied her now more carefully. Her features were fine, almost delicate, but her body was wiry with strength. Not just a survivor, someone used to living past what should have killed her. Her clothes were Varani in origin, but patched with scavenged materials. Human sealant fabric, old colony wiring. She had adapted. You're alone? He asked. She said nothing. I didn't think any of your kind were still here. They're not, she said finally, tightening her grip on the baby. They left. I stayed. Why? Because they told me to leave her behind. She didn't elaborate, didn't need to. Something shifted in Caleb. A hollow place in his chest throbbed again, the space where failure lived. He looked at the child, now breathing more evenly, her soft face nestled against her mother's collarbone. She's strong, he said. She wasn't supposed to live. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She's not pure. They called her corrupted, said she'd poisoned the gene line. Caleb stared at her. You stayed, alone, for her. The woman looked at him then, not with rage or suspicion, but something closer to heartbreak. She's mine, he nodded. Then quietly he unrolled his thermal pack and set it on the ground, a respectful distance away. I'll stay nearby, he said, in case she needs more help. I don't trust you, she said. You're still one of them. I don't blame you. She hesitated again. You may sleep there, she said, nodding to the far wall. No closer. Caleb gave a single nod and backed off, settling in the shadows with his gear. As he laid down, every muscle aching, he looked back toward her. She was rocking the child now, singing something low and wordless. The tune didn't belong to any database he knew. It was ancient, intimate, grieving. For a long time, Caleb didn't close his eyes. And when he did, just before sleep took him, he thought he heard something behind the wall, a faint hum, like machinery or breathing. Something still watched this planet, and it hadn't missed what happened today. The fire had long since died, leaving only faint orange embers glowing like tired stars. The silence inside the ruins was thick, but not peaceful. It was the kind that clung to the skin. Caleb lay awake in the far corner of the chamber, half wrapped in a thermal blanket, staring at the ceiling as wind whispered through broken stone. The air carried the scent of metal and ash. His body ached from the day's ordeal, but sleep didn't come. His thoughts kept circling back to the woman across from him, to the child. He turned his head slightly. She was still there, sitting cross-legged against the wall, her arms wrapped tightly around the baby, watching Caleb in the dark. Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, unblinking. She hadn't slept either. Caleb didn't speak. Neither did she. But something had changed between them. The rage in her had quieted, not disappeared, but settled into a cautious stillness. He had touched her child, saved her life, and somehow that had earned him a sliver of space in her world. He didn't know her name. She hadn't offered it. But she didn't kill him when she had the chance. That counted for something. Caleb shifted slightly. She okay? The woman nodded once. She's warmer now. Good. Silence again. Not cold this time, just worn. Caleb exhaled and leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. But before he could fully drift, something outside shifted. A low vibration, barely audible, faint, but unmistakable. He sat up. The Varani woman's head snapped toward the door. You hear that? He asked. She nodded. It's not the wind. Caleb was already reaching for his pack. He clipped his scanner to his wrist and brought it online. A slow sweep of the area. No visible signals, but an ambient heat rise near the outer perimeter. She stood, the child held tight against her. Her posture had changed, no longer wary but alert, ready. Predator? Caleb asked. Maybe. From your people? She looked at him. Nothing from my people hunts in packs anymore. That answer didn't make him feel better. Then we need to move. He doused the coals with his boot, grabbed his gear, and headed toward the narrow passageway they'd used before. She followed without hesitation. The baby stirred but didn't cry, as if even she knew this wasn't the time. They slipped through a collapsed corridor, ducking beneath warped beams and rusted bulkheads. The ruins groaned as wind pressed through gaps in the stone, but beneath that sound, there was something else. A rhythmic, mechanical thrum, heavy, measured. It wasn't organic. Caleb turned to her. Drone? Worse, she said under her breath. Varani weren't the only ones who abandoned this world. Caleb didn't ask for clarification. He didn't want it. They emerged into a wider chamber that had partially caved in from above, forming a sloped crawl space leading deeper underground. It was narrow and tight, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through, but it was shelter. This way, she said. Old lab facility beneath the east wing. It's sealed. You sure it's still intact? Number, but it's better than out here. They climbed through the broken stone, the air growing colder and tighter with each step. Caleb winced as jagged metal scraped his arm, but kept going. Behind him, she moved like she belonged here, quiet, efficient, never hesitating. They slid into the dark and found the remnants of a long abandoned corridor. The lighting strips flickered, long dead. Caleb activated his torch, casting pale light down the curved walls. She found the door first, a half-buried vault with a cracked biometric seal. Without hesitation, she pressed her hand to a side panel and whispered something in her own language. The panel glowed briefly, then the door hissed open just enough for them to slip inside. It wasn't much, just a circular room with shattered glass consoles and walls lined with storage racks. But it was dry, quiet. The temperature was stable, safe, for now. Caleb collapsed near the far wall, breathing hard. His side ached. He looked down and saw a growing smear of blood on his shirt. Damn. She saw it too. You're bleeding. Yeah, something caught me when we ran. She set the child down in a makeshift sling from her own cloak and crossed to him. Let me see. He hesitated. She raised an eyebrow. I kept your child alive, he said. You sure you want to repay that by pulling out one of my ribs? Her eyes narrowed. You bleed too easily to survive alone. Thanks, that's comforting. But he let her pull his shirt aside. The cut wasn't deep, but it was nasty, jagged, inflamed. She pulled a thin vial from a pouch at her hip and uncapped it. The liquid inside glowed faintly. This may sting. It burned like fire. Yeah, that stung, he muttered through gritted teeth. She worked in silence, hands steady, movements precise. He watched her face, calm now, focused. Not just someone surviving in the ruins, a healer, someone trained. Biotech specialist? He asked. Before. Before what? Her hands paused. Before they told me my child had no place in their world. She didn't say more. She didn't have to. Caleb looked at the baby, still asleep, breathing steady. You stayed behind to protect her. I had no choice. You did, he said quietly. You chose her. Her eyes met his, and for the first time she didn't look away. She stood and moved back to the child. Caleb leaned his head back, blood loss tugging at the edges of his vision. He barely noticed when she came back. She sat next to him now, just a hand's width away, not touching, but closer than before. You never said your name, she said. Caleb, he murmured. She nodded. Sarai. The silence that followed was different. He looked at her again, at the way she curled protectively around the child, the strength in her posture and the grief just beneath it. He felt something in his chest shift, not pity, but connection. She wasn't just a mother. She was a fighter, someone who had lost everything and still stood her ground. He respected that. No, more than that. He understood it. A sound echoed faintly from above, a mechanical grinding noise, followed by the hiss of steam. Sarai's eyes went sharp. They're still out there, she said. Caleb nodded. And they're not just looking for scrap, he added. She reached for her weapon. He powered up his scanner. The child stirred again, tiny fingers grasping at the blanket. Sarai wrapped her arms tighter around her. And in that sealed, half-collapsed room beneath a broken world, they prepared to face whatever was coming, together. The quiet inside the hidden chamber was thick with exhaustion, the kind that sets in after adrenaline fades, after survival has been momentarily secured, and the body is left alone with its pain. Caleb sat with his back to the cold wall, legs stretched out in front of him, his breath steady but shallow. The cut along his side still throbbed, but Sarai's quick work had stabilized the bleeding. The antiseptic she used left behind a tingling warmth, oddly comforting. Across from him, Sarai knelt near a bundle of worn blankets, gently rocking the baby in her arms. Loom. That was the name she'd whispered earlier, soft as breath. The little girl was still too pale, her skin nearly translucent in the dim light, but her breathing had evened out. Her tiny fists occasionally twitched, as if fighting something even in sleep. "You should eat," Caleb said, his voice low and hoarse. Sarai looked up, startled by the sound. She hadn't spoken since treating him, hadn't even acknowledged him beyond the necessary. He reached into his pack, pulled out a warm ration bar wrapped in foil, and broke it in half. It wasn't much, dense protein and a hint of processed spices, but it would hold them over. She hesitated for a moment, then, without a word, crossed the room and accepted it. She sat beside him, closer than before, close enough that he could feel the heat of her body. She tore a piece off the bar and ate it slowly, methodically, like someone who had learned not to waste even a single bite. Her face remained composed, but there was a hunger in her eyes she couldn't quite hide. He watched her in silence. When she finished, she set the wrapper down carefully, almost reverently. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, she shifted her cloak and unwrapped her tunic. Loom stirred. With a soft motion, Sarai brought the child to her chest. The baby latched instinctively, and for a long moment, all the tension seemed to melt from Sarai's face. It was the first time Caleb saw her as something other than a survivor. Not a weapon, not a mystery, just a mother, exhausted, determined, and holding onto something fragile with both hands. "You've been doing this alone for a long time," he said quietly. Sarai didn't look at him. "Yes." He let the silence sit a moment longer before speaking again. "I'd like to understand." This time she looked at him. Her eyes held layers: pain, intelligence, suspicion, maybe even the faint flicker of trust. "You really want to know?" "I do." She adjusted Loom against her, the child's hand curling softly against her skin. "I was born on Ristel," she said, her voice steadier now. "One of the inner moons, second caste bioengineer family. Varani society is layered. The upper lines design, the middle lines repair, the lower lines serve. My line modified genetic blueprints, shaping evolution through precision." Her gaze drifted, lost somewhere in memory. "I was meant to carry a legacy. I followed the protocols. I was chosen to bond with a male from a parallel caste. The match was perfect, genetically, politically, emotionally. It was empty." Caleb listened, didn't interrupt. "But I met someone else," she continued. "A technician. Quiet. Curious. Not from a primary line. We were never meant to be paired." But he listened. He made me laugh. He made me feel. Her voice cracked slightly, then steadied. "When I became pregnant, I hid it. Long enough to reach a birthing chamber in the outer districts. Loom was born too early. Her lungs didn't develop correctly. They said she was unstable, a mutation, that she'd never survive without intervention, and that even if she did, her presence would destabilize the genetic line." Her jaw clenched. "They gave me a choice. Terminate her quietly, preserve my position, or leave." She looked down at the sleeping child in her arms. I didn't hesitate. Caleb couldn't look away. He felt something deep in his chest ache, something that hadn't stirred in a long time. "I took her and ran, hid in the evac tunnels when the purges began, found old lab sites, abandoned relay stations, scavenged what I could. She fought through fevers, collapsed lungs, malnutrition. I learned to repair medical drones by memory. I sterilized equipment with heated rocks. I did everything I could, because no one else would." "She's alive because of you," Caleb said softly. Sarai looked at him for a long moment. "She shouldn't be, but she is." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin piece of fabric, a faded patch from an old MedCorps uniform, Earthside. He turned it in his hand once, then set it gently beside him. "I was a field medic before the war," he said. "Civilian. I worked the fallout zones, famine camps, collapsed colonies, places no one wanted to be. I saw a lot of people suffer. Some of them were saved, some weren't." He took a breath. "There was this kid, 6 years old, had the same look in her eyes as Loom does when she's fighting to breathe. We didn't have the equipment we needed. I tried anyway. Stayed with her for hours. She died holding my hand." Sarai didn't speak, but something softened in her expression. "I promised myself if I ever got another chance, I wouldn't walk away again." She nodded slowly, cradling Loom closer. "You didn't." A long silence settled between them. Not awkward, but full. Like something unspoken had been seen and acknowledged. Then, from the far end of the corridor, a faint sound echoed, metallic, rhythmic. Caleb stood instantly, hand on his sidearm. Sarai stood too, wrapping the baby tightly in her sling. Same as before? Caleb asked. No, she said, voice low. This one's heavier. He activated his scanner. No signal, but the static was sharper now. Interference. Artificial. Someone was trying to block detection. A new frequency pulsed once across the readout. Clean, short, and unmistakably coded. Sarai inhaled sharply. What is it? He asked. She looked at him, voice hardening. That's Varani, a command ping, short-range asset retrieval. Caleb's stomach turned. You mean, they're not just searching, she said. They've found us. He moved fast, grabbing his pack. Sarai pulled a curved blade from the hidden compartment of her suit. The baby barely stirred, trained perhaps to stay silent when danger neared. They slipped out into the corridor, the glow of the chamber fading behind them. The sound came again, closer now, clank, clank, whir. Not just drones, not scavengers, something designed. As they ran, Sarai whispered, They've come for her. And in the shadows of the broken city, hunted by the remnants of a society that once cast her out, she ran not as a fugitive, but as a mother with nothing left to lose. Caleb kept pace beside her, and for the first time since his boots hit this planet, he didn't feel like a visitor. He felt like he belonged exactly where he was, running with her, ready to stand, to fight, to hold the line, not for orders, not for duty, for them, for family. They ran in silence, moving through the skeletal remains of what had once been a brilliant Varani city, now reduced to ruins and ghosts. Every step echoed down the hollow corridors. Every breath seemed to carry the weight of something ancient and watching. Caleb kept close behind Sarai, her silhouette shifting through crumbled passageways with practiced grace. The child bundled tight against her chest. The air was getting colder, thinner. The sky above the broken ceiling panels was graying with dust storms that threatened to fall at any moment. But it wasn't the weather they were worried about. It was them. Whatever had sent out that coded retrieval ping, it wasn't just scanning anymore. It was closing in. They ducked into a collapsed corridor, one Caleb had marked earlier as unstable. It had seemed too risky then, but now the risk of staying in the open was greater. Stone and steel formed a slanted chamber half buried under rubble, creating a makeshift shelter with only one visible exit. It was tight and dark, but for now, it was a place to stop, to breathe. Sarai leaned back against the wall, her hand instinctively reaching to cradle Loom's head. The baby was breathing, but her face was pale again. Too pale. She's not stabilizing, Sarai whispered. Caleb was already kneeling beside her, digging through his medical pouch. His fingers moved fast, more by muscle memory than thought. He pulled out a microdose ampule of thermalin, one of the few compounds he knew to be cross-species compatible. I'm going to try this, he said. Sarai didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She just held Loom steady as Caleb injected the dose into the soft tissue of her shoulder. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the baby whimpered. A flicker of breath caught in her chest. Her limbs twitched. Her eyes opened just a crack. She's responding, Caleb murmured. It's working. But Sarai didn't relax. Her eyes stayed locked on her daughter's face, her shoulders tense. She was strong earlier, she said, her voice brittle. But now, she's slipping again. This isn't just exhaustion. Something's affecting her. Caleb's jaw tightened. She's overheating. Her body's fighting the genetic destabilization. Sarai's eyes shot to his. What? He hesitated. You told me your people called her impure, but that's not the full story, is it? What did they really see in her? Sarai looked away. I don't know, she said at last. They ran tests, but they kept the results sealed. I only know she was different, not weaker, not broken. Different. They couldn't understand it, and so they feared it. That's how my people work. Anything outside the line is considered a threat to the structure. Caleb shook his head. She's not a threat. She's the future. But Sarai didn't answer. Then, from just outside the corridor, a sound cut through the stillness. Sharp and deliberate, a hiss of pressurized hydraulics, followed by the rhythmic, steady footfalls of something large. Caleb stood instantly, his sidearm drawn. He checked the power cell. Half a charge, not enough if it came to a fight. Sarai cradled Loom and slipped to the wall, silent as shadow. Her blade was already out. The first shadow passed the entrance, then another. Metal limbs, sleek design. The armor plating shimmered with a faint blue sheen. Caleb's stomach dropped. Retrievers, Sarai breathed. From the genetics division. How many? 2, maybe 3. Elite models, designed to extract bioassets without question. Caleb glanced at her. So they're here for her. Number, they're here for me and her. Caleb didn't hesitate. Then we don't let them take either of you. She looked at him then. Really looked, her breath catching for just a moment. And in that space of silence between them, the weight of everything unsaid finally cracked. You don't understand, she whispered. You think you do, but you don't. Then explain it to me. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, guilt, grief. She's not just a child, she's the result of an unapproved experiment, something the genetic line wasn't supposed to be capable of. She's a violation, a mistake, and I helped make her. I gave her life knowing what they would do, and I've lived every day wondering if I was selfish for keeping her. Caleb's voice was low and fierce. You weren't. She's in pain now, she's sick, and I don't know how to save her. I don't know if I can. He took a step forward, then another until he was inches from her. Then let me help you, let me try. Something in her broke. You act like you care, like you mean it, but you don't know me. You don't know what I've done, what I had to become just to survive long enough to hold her in my arms. Caleb didn't flinch. I know you chose her over everything, over your people, your status, your safety. That's more than most would do. You think I don't understand loss? You think I haven't made choices that haunt me? He took a shaky breath. I didn't come here to be a hero. I came here because I was already broken. I just didn't realize that maybe broken people can still love something enough to protect it. The silence between them grew heavy. Sarai's lips parted, her eyes full of too much emotion to name. Then she did something unexpected. She reached for him. Her hand touched his face, slow and uncertain, like she didn't quite believe he was real. Her thumb brushed the edge of his jaw. And when he didn't pull away, she stepped closer. Loom shifted gently in her sling, the warmth of both their bodies cocooning her. I don't know what this is, Sarai whispered, but I don't want to lose it before I understand it. Caleb leaned forward, forehead resting against hers. You won't. And then she kissed him. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Their breath mingled in the dark, and for one brief, impossible moment, the ruins faded away. The war, the chase, the pain. It all went quiet, until the walls shook. The retrievers were moving, closing in. Caleb pulled back, fire in his eyes. We hold them here. You take Loom. I'll distract them long enough for you to find another path. No, she said, voice sharp. We do this together. And just like that, the moment was over. Not lost, but transformed. Now it was fire. Now it was war. Whatever came next, they would face it not as strangers, not as fugitives, but as something more, a family worth fighting for. The corridor stank of burned circuitry and blood. Smoke curled from the dismembered retriever at Caleb's feet, its core still twitching with the final flickers of corrupted code. Sparks leapt from a severed limb, then faded into stillness. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarai stood just beyond the wreckage, blade dripping with dark fluid that wasn't quite oil and wasn't quite blood. Her chest rose and fell in short, harsh breaths. Loom stirred against her shoulder, sensing the tension but too weak to cry. Caleb looked at her, chest heaving. You okay? She didn't answer right away. She was listening, head tilted toward the distant hum reverberating through the floor. There's more coming, she whispered. But not machines this time. Caleb nodded. He didn't ask how she knew. She felt it. He trusted that now. They didn't run. Instead, they moved, quickly, deliberately, through the collapsed halls until they reached a wide platform near the heart of the ruins. It had once been a council chamber, by the look of the circular architecture. Broken seats formed a half ring around a central podium now cracked down the middle. Dust danced in the air, catching shafts of weak light breaking through the fractured ceiling. They waited in the center, no more hiding, no more shadows. Then the sound came, soft at first, a low, pulsing hum, almost like breath. Then the unmistakable whine of high-precision thrusters. A sleek Varani scout ship descended through the clearing above them, its hull etched with iridescent symbols that shimmered like starlight on water. Sarai didn't flinch. Caleb's hand went to his weapon but didn't draw. Not yet. The ship touched down with the grace of a falling leaf. The side hatch opened and 4 figures emerged, tall, wrapped in ceremonial robes reinforced with synthetic armor. Their eyes glowed with faint violet light, cold and unreadable. But it was the 5th figure that made Sarai go still. The woman who stepped out moved like a shadow made flesh. Her hair was silver, braided in an elaborate crown, her skin a polished blue that shimmered with pulsing glyphs. Her presence was quiet and absolute. "Sarai Velen," the woman said. Her voice was smooth as glass, her expression unreadable. "You're difficult to track." Sarai's jaw clenched. That was the idea. "You violated Genetic Code 12C by breeding outside the approved caste lines. You further violated planetary quarantine by reactivating beacon signatures in a restricted zone." "I activated nothing." The woman tilted her head. "Your companion did." Caleb stepped forward, meeting the woman's gaze without blinking. "She saved her child, that's what matters." The woman didn't look at him. "The hybrid child carries unstable traits. Her presence introduces biological uncertainty into a carefully structured system." "She's not a threat," Sarai snapped. "She's a child. She is both." There it was, no lies, no veiled threats, just absolute inhuman precision. "You came to kill us," Sarai said. The woman raised a hand, palm outward. "We came to offer mercy." Behind her, one of the robed Varani brought forward a shimmering tablet. On it, a series of glyphs flickered in soft blues and golds. Official documentation. "You may return to the Varani Protectorate. You will be reinstated. Your former title will be restored. Your work may resume." Caleb narrowed his eyes. "What's the cost?" The woman's gaze didn't waver. "You will surrender the hybrid to the Genetic Preservation Division. She will be treated with care, and the human must remain behind." Sarai said nothing. Caleb turned to her, his breath catching. "Sarai." She didn't look at him. And that silence, those impossible, fragile seconds where she said nothing, felt like a knife. His voice was raw. "So that's it." Still nothing. Caleb nodded slowly. "I guess I was just temporary. A tool. Something to help you get from point A to point B." "That's not fair," Sarai said quietly. "But it's true, isn't it?" His voice cracked. "I held your child like she was my own. I stood beside you when the world wanted to erase her. And now that it's safe to go home, I'm just discarded." "She's sick, Caleb," Sarai said, finally looking at him. "And they have tech that might help her." "They'll dissect her, Sarai. They'll take her apart one cell at a time, call it preservation, and never let you see her again." Sarai's breath hitched. She turned to the Varani woman. "If I accept, will I be allowed contact with her?" "No." That single word rang through the chamber like thunder. Something in Sarai's face broke, but she still didn't speak. And that silence, again, was too much. Caleb stepped back. "I hope you get what you want," he said quietly. "And I hope it doesn't kill you." He turned and walked toward the shadows, every step heavier than the last. Sarai didn't call after him. Not then. Not yet. Dust still hung in the air like old ghosts as the ruins quieted. The explosion Caleb had triggered had collapsed the chamber's entryway behind them, sealing off the Varani and their soldiers, at least for now. The adrenaline that had carried them was fading, replaced by a heavy, aching silence. Sarai's chest heaved as she steadied Loom, holding the child close beneath her cloak. Caleb stood a few steps away, gun still in hand, eyes locked on the settling rubble. They didn't speak at first. There were no words big enough for what had just happened. Sarai had walked away from everything she once was, again. And this time, she hadn't looked back. They moved quickly from the atrium, down into the narrow underlayers of the ruins, where ancient biotech conduits still pulsed faintly with forgotten energy. It was deeper, darker here, safer maybe. They found an old emergency operations chamber, partially shielded and buried beneath collapsed stone. A place for fugitives now, not leaders, not scientists, just people trying to hold on to each other. Caleb lit a low heat lamp and dropped his pack. Sarai sat slowly, back against the wall, eyes distant, Loom asleep in her arms. For a long while, the only sound was the quiet ticking of the lamp and the baby's breath. Caleb sat down beside her. He didn't press her, but he could feel the storm inside her. She broke the silence first. "My people believe in control above all else," she said quietly. "Order, symmetry, structure, everything is calculated, partnerships, conception. Even grief has a designated place on the schedule." Caleb turned toward her, listening. "I tried to follow the system," she continued, "but when I met him, I broke the rules." "Him?" Caleb asked gently. Sarai nodded, her gaze still fixed on nothing. "Loom's father. He was a second-tier technician. Quiet. Brilliant in his way, but not prestigious. Not from a primary gene line. We kept our bond hidden for almost a year." She swallowed hard. "When I learned I was pregnant, we knew what the council would say. Unapproved pairing, unauthorized reproduction. Our genetic compatibility wasn't in the database. It didn't matter how we felt. We had corrupted the order." Caleb shifted closer, his hand resting on the floor beside hers. "We decided to run," she said. "We waited until the shift rotations changed, packed only what we needed. He carried a field stabilizer, I carried her, still in stasis. We made it almost to the outer gates." Her voice lowered to a whisper. "Then they caught him." Caleb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "I thought they'd execute him," Sarai said. "Publicly, as a message, but they didn't." She finally turned to him, eyes full of something heavier than sadness, something hollow. "They took him. And they didn't kill him. They stripped him of identity, cleansed his memory, resequenced his genome to match a blank designation line." Caleb blinked. "You mean they erased him? Genetically, psychologically, as if he never existed? No name, no past. A pure, functional citizen." Her voice cracked. "I don't know if he's still alive. I don't even know if he'd recognize me. I don't know if there's anything of him left." Caleb looked at her, his throat tight. He had no words for that kind of violation, no equivalent. What do you say to someone who lost the person they loved, not to death, but to systematic deletion? "I'm sorry," he finally said. She nodded once, not in thanks, but acknowledgement. "For a long time," she continued, "I thought that was the price, that love was a mistake, that breaking the code had cost me everything, and maybe it did." Caleb studied her face. "But you'd do it again." Her eyes met his, and there it was, pure, burning certainty. Yes. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "I know," she whispered. Outside, faint tremors stirred the dust. The Varani were regrouping, recovering. Time was running out. But inside that chamber, something had changed. The distance between them was gone. Sarai exhaled slowly. "We have to get out of this zone. They'll be tracking the heat signatures. The pulse bought us time, but not much." "There's an abandoned Earth outpost in the mountains," Caleb said. "Old survey site, shielded. If it's still intact, we can hole up, maybe even build something sustainable." Sarai nodded. "We go at first light." They rested in shifts that night. Caleb stayed awake through the darkest hours, weapon in hand, watching the door, watching her. Sarai slept lightly, curled around Loom like a shield. And every so often, even in her sleep, she reached toward Caleb, never far, never gone. Just before dawn, Loom stirred and let out a soft, breathy sound. Not a cry, not quite. Caleb leaned closer. "She's saying something," he murmured. Sarai smiled faintly. "She's been listening to us." The baby blinked up at him with wide, curious eyes. Then slowly her mouth formed a shape. "Da." Sarai's breath caught. Caleb's heart stopped. It wasn't just sound. It was choice. Loom had chosen. He looked at Sarai and her eyes were shining with something raw and unstoppable. "She knows," she said. He gathered them both into his arms, holding them like a vow. They had miles to go. An uncertain road. A world that still wanted to erase what they were building. But in that moment, they had something more powerful than safety. They had each other. They had family. And they had a reason to fight for tomorrow. The days blurred after the escape. They hiked for miles, navigating broken terrain under half-collapsed skies, carrying their daughter between them like a flame they couldn't let go out. They traveled mostly at night, when the wind masked their movements and the light couldn't betray them. Caleb led through the hardest climbs, while Sarai read the currents in the earth, the pulse in the ground, always sensing the subtle shifts of what was still alive beneath the planet's skin. They found the outpost on the 7th day. It was smaller than Caleb remembered. A squat, weather-worn structure tucked against the base of a sandstone cliff, buried beneath decades of sand and time. But the structure held. Steel bones, reinforced plating, sealed vaults untouched by time. They cleared it together, repaired the filtration system, bypassed the solar grid. Day by day, they brought it back to life, not fast, not easily, but steadily. And with each passing sunrise, they settled into something neither of them had dared to hope for. A rhythm, a beginning, a home. It was early evening now. The air inside the outpost was warm, humming with soft light. The wind outside had quieted. In the central room, the fire Caleb had built from cracked polymer rods flickered in a makeshift hearth. Sarai sat cross-legged on a sleeping pad, Loom asleep in her arms, her tiny breaths rising and falling in a perfect, delicate pattern. Caleb sat beside her, one knee drawn up, his hand gently resting on her thigh. "She's sleeping deeper now," Sarai said softly, brushing a thumb across Loom's cheek. "Her temperature's holding, no tremors today." Caleb exhaled. "That's good." She turned to look at him. "That's more than good. That's a miracle." He smiled, but there was weight in his eyes. "You made that happen, Sarai. You kept her alive. I was just a guy who showed up too late to help anyone else." Her gaze softened. "Don't say that. It's true." She reached over, cupping his jaw, guiding his face toward hers. "No, it isn't. You didn't show up late. You showed up when I needed someone most. When she needed someone." Caleb leaned into her touch, closing his eyes for a moment. Her hand was warm, steady. "I never believed I'd get a second chance," he said. "After Earth, after all the people I couldn't save, I thought I was just wandering until I ran out of places to go." She leaned closer. "Then why did you stay with me?" His voice was quiet. "Because I didn't want to lose another child. And then, because I couldn't stand the thought of losing you." She kissed him, not urgently, not fiercely, just fully. A kiss that said, "You're safe now, and you're mine." Caleb reached up and cupped her face, deepening the kiss, his fingers tangling in the soft strands of her hair. She tasted like ash and air and warmth, like survival, like coming home. When they finally broke apart, she kept her forehead pressed to his. "I love you," she whispered. His breath caught. He smiled, the kind of smile that hurts a little when it's real. "I love you too," he said, "more than I knew I could." She pulled back just enough to look at him, really look. "Say it again." He leaned in, brushing another kiss to her lips. "I love you." She kissed the corner of his mouth. "Again." "I love you," he murmured, against her cheek, against her temple, against the line of her jaw. Each kiss a promise. She laughed softly, a sound he didn't hear often but craved. "You're ridiculous." "I know," he said. "You married into it." Her eyebrows lifted. "Married?" He grinned. "It's a human concept. I'm simplifying the situation." Sarai tilted her head. "Explain it." "It means we stay," he said. "We don't run, we build something, together." She looked down at Loom, still sleeping peacefully. "I like that," she whispered. "I like it very much." They laid Loom in the crib Caleb had patched together from salvage and reinforced fabric. Sarai traced the child's soft hair, kissed her tiny fingers, then turned back to Caleb. The two of them moved toward the open hatch, where the wind drifted gently through, and the first stars began to flicker awake across the sky. They stood there, shoulder to shoulder, watching the dusk settle. Sarai's hand found his. "This isn't what I imagined," she said. "No?" he asked. "I used to think safety would mean returning to the life I knew, restoring my name, my caste, my place in the order." He turned to her. "And now?" She looked at him, eyes shimmering. "Now I understand. This is safety. This is freedom." He reached down and lifted her hand to his lips, kissing the back of her fingers. "You gave me back something I thought was gone forever. You gave me something I never had at all," she whispered. They stood in silence after that. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything that mattered had already been said. The wind shifted. Loom stirred in her sleep and let out a small sound, half sigh, half word. Caleb leaned back through the hatch. "She's dreaming." Sarai smiled. "She's home." And so were they. Not because the world was fixed, not because the past had been undone, but because love, real, raw, imperfect love, had found them where they least expected it. And it had stayed. The sun rose over the cliffs in soft gold, spilling light across the plateau like a warm breath. It kissed the edge of the metal outpost roof, crept down the weathered rock, and filtered through the transparent panels of the dome that Sarai had reconstructed from salvaged Varani shielding. Inside, the light landed gently on a sleeping child. Loom stirred, her small blue fingers twitching around the edge of a plush fabric square Caleb had stitched together from his old field coat. Her eyes blinked open slowly, violet and clear now, no longer dulled by fever or fear. She let out a soft sound, somewhere between a yawn and a hum, and rolled to her side. Across the room, Sarai was already awake. She sat by the small planter beds along the wall, lush green against all odds. Her fingers moved carefully, trimming a stem, checking the nutrient feed. The crops were slow-growing hybrids, part human engineering, part Varani design, optimized to survive in poor soil and filtered light. She'd mixed the genomes herself. It had taken weeks to get the balance right. Behind her, Caleb emerged from their shared room, shirtless, rubbing his eyes, hair tousled from sleep. He paused when he saw her. "You've been up for hours, haven't you?" She turned slightly, not stopping her work. "Only 2. Is that your idea of sleeping in?" "I could ask the same of you." He walked to her, bent down, and kissed her shoulder without a word. She leaned back against him with a soft smile, the comfort of routine settling around them like a warm blanket. "You keep this up," he said, gesturing to the greenery, "and we'll have real food soon." "Imagine that," Sarai murmured. "Dinner that didn't come out of a ration pack." He grinned. "Luxury." Loom's voice called out behind them, soft and cheerful. "Mama!" Sarai stood at once, smile blooming across her face. She crossed the room and scooped Loom up in her arms, pressing kisses across her cheeks. "Good morning, little star." "Mama, bird again." Loom pointed toward the open skylight where a winged silhouette darted past. "That's the 3rd time she's mentioned it," Caleb said. "I think she's naming the same rock 3 times. "It's called imagination," Sarai replied, lifting Loom high. The little girl squealed with laughter. They spent the morning like that. No alarms, no threats. Just quiet hours filled with the hum of tools and the sound of soft footsteps. Caleb fixed the solar array while Sarai taught Loom to sort plant seeds by color and shape. They paused only when Loom, muddy up to her elbows, proudly announced she'd found a magic one. Sarai leaned in to inspect. "That's a pebble." "A magic pebble," Caleb corrected, winking. In the afternoon they cooked, really cooked. Sarai had stored root paste and dried herbs from their first harvest, and Caleb seared protein slices from a field grow he'd developed using his old military rations as base protein. It tasted like ash and pepper and sunlight. Loom sat between them on the floor, picking out grains from her bowl with extreme focus, only occasionally sneaking food to the little groundhopper that had started showing up outside the door. "Are we keeping that thing?" Caleb asked, watching the tiny creature nuzzle Loom's foot. "She's already named it," Sarai said with a shrug. "What is it?" "Ashu." "Why?" "She sneezed when she saw it the first time." "Perfect," Caleb laughed. "Ashu it is." Later, when the sun began to dip, they climbed to the outpost roof. Sarai carried Loom on her hip, while Caleb hauled a blanket and 2 cups of warm infusion. The wind was cool, but not cold, the air soft with twilight. The stars hadn't come out yet, but the sky was ready for them, clear, deep, and endless. They lay down together, Loom curled between them, her small hands wrapped around a carved toy Caleb had made from a broken panel. "Do you ever think," Sarai said, her voice low and even, "that we were never meant to survive this place?" Caleb reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. "Number, I think we were meant to find each other here." She turned toward him, eyes lit by fading light. "You still believe that?" He nodded. "Every single day." She leaned forward, brushing her lips against his. The kiss was slow, grounding, familiar. It held no urgency, only depth. It said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving. I choose this. I choose you." "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," he said. Then Loom's tiny voice broke the stillness. "Love you." They both looked down, stunned. Caleb blinked. "Did she just—" Sarai laughed, the sound like wind through glass. "She did." Loom blinked up at them, utterly serious. "Love you," she repeated, touching both their faces with sleepy hands. They wrapped themselves around her, a triangle of warmth beneath the stars. And as the first constellations flickered into view, unfamiliar, ancient, untouched, Caleb knew with unshakable certainty that they had already built the only future that mattered. This wasn't just survival. This was life. This was home. And love, once lost in war and exile and silence, now lived here in full bloom, growing brighter with each new day.